Shadow people have always been a source of fascination and fear for me. The stories of these dark, shadowy figures that appear in the corners of our vision have been passed down through generations, whispered as chilling tales around campfires or late-night gatherings. Little did I know that I would one day have my own terrifying encounter with these mysterious entities. It all began when I moved into an old, run-down apartment building on the outskirts of a small, sleepy town. The building had an air of neglect, and its gloomy hallways and faded wallpaper gave off a sense of abandonment. Still, it was within my budget, and I was eager to have a place of my own, so I signed the lease without much thought. The first few weeks were uneventful. I settled into my new apartment, unpacked my belongings, and tried to make the place feel like home. The odd creaks and groans of an old building were to be expected, and I paid them little mind. But as time went on, I began to notice strange occurrences that I couldn't easily dismiss. It started with fleeting glimpses in my peripheral vision. I'd be in the kitchen, cooking dinner, and out of the corner of my eye, I'd see a dark, shadowy figure move swiftly past the doorway. When I turned to look, there was nothing there. At first, I brushed it off as a trick of the light or a tired mind playing tricks on me. But the encounters grew more frequent, and the figures began to take on more defined shapes. I'd see them out of the corner of my eye, standing just beyond the doorway or at the end of a dimly lit hallway. They were always dark, featureless silhouettes, and their presence filled me with an inexplicable sense of dread. I tried to rationalize these experiences, chalking them up to stress or fatigue. I told myself it was all in my head, that my imagination was getting the best of me. But as the weeks turned into months, I couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease that had settled over me. One evening, as I was preparing to go to bed, I saw one of the shadow figures standing in the doorway of my bedroom. It was taller than an average person and appeared to be watching me. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest, and for the first time I got a clear look at its shape. It was like a featureless human-shaped void, darker than the surrounding darkness. Its presence was suffocating, and I couldn't tear my eyes away from it. I blinked, and in an instant it was gone. The room returned to normal, but the memory of that encounter haunted me. I lay in bed, unable to sleep, feeling a deep sense of foreboding. It was as though the shadow figure had left a lingering imprint on my room, and I was no longer alone in that space. As time passed, the shadow figures became a nightly occurrence. They appeared in various rooms of my apartment, often watching me from a distance. I tried to capture them on camera, but whenever I pointed my phone in their direction, they would vanish. It was as if they knew I was trying to document their presence and wanted to remain hidden. The fear and paranoia began to take a toll on my well-being. I stopped inviting friends over, afraid of what they might see or experience in my apartment. Sleep became a distant memory as the shadow figure seemed to be most active in the dead of night. I would lie in bed, my heart racing, waiting for the next encounter, knowing that I couldn't escape their sinister presence. One particularly chilling night, I awoke to the sensation of someone standing at the foot of my bed. I could feel their gaze on me, an intense, malevolent stare that sent shivers down my spine. The room was shrouded in darkness, but I knew that the figure was there, lurking just out of view. Summoning all my courage, I turned on the bedside lamp, illuminating the room in an instant, but there was no one there. The figure had disappeared, leaving me alone with my racing heart and the sickening feeling that I was being watched, even though the room was empty. I couldn't go on like this. The constant fear and lack of sleep had taken a toll on my physical and mental health. I decided to confide in a friend, someone who had always been open-minded and understanding. I described my experiences with the shadow people, expecting them to dismiss my claims as mere hallucinations. To my surprise, my friend's expression grew serious and they began to recount their own encounters with shadow people. They spoke of similar sightings, of being watched and followed by these enigmatic entities. Their stories sent a chill down my spine as I realized that I was not alone in my experiences. My friend suggested that we seek out the expertise of a paranormal investigator, someone who might be able to shed light on the nature of these shadow figures and help us find a way to rid my apartment of their presence. Desperate for a solution, I agreed. The investigator, a middle-aged man named Robert, arrived at my apartment one evening. He brought with him an array of equipment, including infrared cameras, electromagnetic field detectors, and voice recorders. He explained that he had dealt with cases of shadow people before and that they were a mysterious phenomenon that had baffled even the most seasoned paranormal investigators. We began the investigation that night, with Robert setting up his equipment in various rooms of my apartment. As we moved through the darkened space, he explained that shadow people were often associated with negative energy, and their appearances were believed to be a result of disturbances in the spiritual realm. For hours, we conducted EVP, electronic voice phenomena sessions, asking questions and listening for responses in the form of unexplained voices or sounds. The air was heavy with tension, and I could feel the shadow figures watching us, their presence growing stronger as we delved deeper into the investigation. During one particularly intense EVP session, we heard a faint, whispering voice on the recording. It was a chilling, disembodied voice that seemed to say, "Leave or suffer." The message sent a wave of fear through me, and I couldn't help but wonder if we were in over our heads. As the investigation continued, Robert's equipment began to pick up anomalies: spikes in electromagnetic fields, temperature fluctuations, and strange, unexplained sounds. It was as if the apartment was a hotbed of paranormal activity, and the shadow figures were drawn to the chaos. Finally, we decided to conduct a séance in the hopes of making contact with the haunting figures. The room was dark, lit only by a few candles, and we held hands in a circle as Robert attempted to communicate with the entities. The atmosphere was tense, and I could feel a sense of darkness in the air. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped dramatically and the candles flickered wildly. I felt a presence in the room, and a low, guttural voice seemed to emanate from the shadows. It spoke in a language I couldn't understand, but its tone was unmistakably hostile. In that moment, I realized that we had awakened something old and utterly chilling, something far beyond our understanding. The shadow figures were not mere specters or apparitions. They were something ancient and otherworldly, and they did not want to be disturbed. The séance ended abruptly as the room grew colder and the oppressive presence intensified. We blew out the candles and fled the apartment, leaving behind the equipment and the darkness that had taken hold of the space. Over the next few days, I sought the help of a local priest to perform a cleansing and blessing of the apartment. The priest sprinkled holy water and recited prayers, invoking the power of the divine to cleanse the space of negative energy. The ritual seemed to have an immediate effect, as the apartment felt lighter and the shadow figures appeared to have vanished. I moved out of the apartment soon after, eager to leave the terror of the shadow people behind. I never discovered the true nature of these entities or why they had targeted me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their next victim. My encounter with the shadow people left me with a profound sense of unease and a deep-seated fear of the unknown. It was a chilling reminder that there are forces in the world that defy explanation, and some mysteries are best left untouched. The memory of those featureless, terrifying figures continues to haunt my nightmares, a reminder that the darkness can hide far more than we could ever imagine. The night started like any other. I had just finished watching a movie on the couch, and the soft glow of the TV screen was the only source of light in the living room. My wife, Emily, had already gone to bed, leaving me alone with our thoughts in the quiet house. The clock on the wall ticked away the seconds as I contemplated turning in for the night as well. I was about to get up when I heard it, a faint creaking sound coming from the hallway. My heart leaped into my throat as I strained my ears to listen. It was a distinct, unmistakable sound, one that I'd heard 1,000 times before. It was the sound of the floorboards in the hallway outside the bedroom, creaking under the weight of someone's footsteps. Panic seized me as I realized that Emily and I were not alone in the house. I considered waking her, but I didn't want to make any noise that might alert the intruder. My mind raced as I tried to think of what to do next. I needed to protect my wife and myself. I decided to quietly make my way to the hallway, to confront the intruder before they could get any closer to the bedroom. I slipped off the couch and tiptoed through the darkened living room, trying to make as little noise as possible. My heart pounded in my chest, and the sweat on my palms made them slick. As I reached the hallway, I saw a shadowy figure moving in the dim light. The intruder was tall and wearing dark clothes, their face obscured by a ski mask. I could hear them breathing heavily, their presence sending shivers down my spine. Without thinking, I lunged at the intruder, tackling them to the ground. We struggled in the dim light, the intruder's gloved hands grasping at my shirt. I managed to pin them down, my heart racing as I contemplated what to do next. "Who are you? What do you want?" I hissed, my voice trembling with fear. The intruder said nothing, their breath coming in ragged gasps. I could see the glint of something metallic in their hand, and before I could react, they swung it at me. Pain seared through my shoulder as the blade connected, and I cried out in agony. I grappled with the intruder, desperately trying to disarm them. The struggle was fierce, and I could hear Emily stirring in the bedroom, her sleep-addled mind slowly registering the commotion. With a final burst of strength, I managed to wrench the weapon from the intruder's hand. It clattered to the floor, and the intruder, now unarmed, broke free from my grip and dashed down the hallway, disappearing into the darkness. Blood dripped from my wounded shoulder as I staggered back into the living room, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. Emily, now fully awake and alarmed, rushed to my side, her eyes widening when she saw the blood-soaked wound. "What happened? Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling with worry. I tried to steady my breathing to explain what had just occurred, but the words came out in a jumbled mess. We had to call the police, that much was clear, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the intruder would return. I feared for our safety, for our lives. While I waited for the police to arrive, I realized that I needed to secure the house. I locked all the doors and windows, my trembling hands fumbling with the keys. The sense of vulnerability that washed over me was overwhelming, and I couldn't help but blame myself for not being more prepared. The police arrived within minutes, and as I recounted the events of the night, I could see the concern on their faces. They assured us that they would do everything in their power to find the intruder, but the thought of a stranger lurking in our home sent a chill down my spine. The investigation that followed was thorough, but the intruder had left no obvious clues. They had gained access through a small window that I had forgotten to secure, and there were no fingerprints or other evidence to trace. I couldn't help but wonder how they had chosen our house, what had drawn them to our quiet suburban neighborhood. As the days turned into weeks, Emily and I tried to move on with our lives, but the memory of the home invasion continued to haunt us. We installed a state-of-the-art security system, added deadbolts to all the doors, and even considered moving to a new place. The sense of violation and vulnerability had taken a toll on both of us, and the fear of another intrusion loomed large in our minds. Then, one night as we lay in bed, I heard it again, the faint creaking of the floorboards in the hallway. My heart leaped into my throat as I realized that the nightmare was not over. I shook Emily awake, and we both strained to listen. The creaking grew louder, closer, and we could hear the slow, deliberate footsteps approaching the bedroom. Panic surged through me as I reached for my phone to call the police, but it was gone. I had left it on the nightstand, and now it was too late. The bedroom door creaked open, and in the dim light I saw the silhouette of the intruder. They were back, and this time they were not alone. Another figure emerged from the shadows, their presence sending a wave of dread through the room. Without a word, the intruders advanced toward the bed, their intentions clear. I knew that we were in grave danger, and I had to do something to protect Emily and myself. With a surge of desperation, I lunged at the intruders, hoping to catch them off guard. The struggle that followed was chaotic and violent. I could hear Emily's terrified screams as we grappled with the intruders, trying to fend them off. My mind raced, and I realized that I had to find a way to get us out of this nightmare. I managed to knock one of the intruders to the ground, and in the confusion, Emily and I dashed out of the room and down the hallway. We could hear the intruders giving chase, their footsteps pounding behind us. We reached the front door, flung it open, and ran out into the darkness. I could hear the intruders shouting and cursing behind us, but we didn't stop until we had reached a neighbor's house and called the police. The authorities arrived once more, and this time they managed to apprehend the intruders. It turned out that the intruders were a couple of individuals who had been involved in a string of home invasions in the area. They had targeted our house at random, and their intent had been to rob and harm us. As the police led the intruders away in handcuffs, I felt a mix of relief and anger. Our sense of security had been shattered, and the trauma of the home invasions would stay with us for the rest of our lives. We moved away from the house, unable to bear the thought of living in the place where we had endured such terror. The memories of that night continued to haunt us, a constant reminder of the vulnerability we had felt. The experience left us scarred and forever changed, a stark reminder that danger could lurk just beyond the walls of our own home. We had survived the home invasions, but the fear, the helplessness, and the trauma would never truly leave us.